So the 2022 GLRI, shows us which countries and which regions around the world have resilience capabilities to sustain and, to obviously have, strong labor markets during times of crisis, whether it be in terms of short-term crises, such as COVID-19, or longer-term, shocks to the labor market, such as digital transformation or even the green economy transition. When we look actually at the regions and explicitly at the Middle East and North Africa, we see that, that many regions actually around the world, and MENA is no exception, have actually declined in terms of their labor resilience capabilities. So right now, actually, the Middle East is 5th out of 8 regions in terms of resilience ranking. And on average, the countries within the MENA region have actually declined 4 rankings over the past 5 years in terms of their resilience. We see also that within MENA that there's large gaps in terms of resilience scores. So for example, the top performing Arab country, the United Arab Emirates, was 35th, and at the bottom, for example, past the 140th rank, I believe, would be Yemen, for example. So very strong in disparities in terms of labor resilience itself. We can also see, at least within the regions, in particular within the Middle East, that there's a need for strong, both in terms of the policy reform, so making sure that the regions are actually up to, good policy standards, whether it be in terms of, different structural policy changes, macroeconomic policy changes, and even within the labor market itself to ensure social safety nets, and then as well making sure that economies are transitioning to provide better work for their populations. So the UAE itself is a top performer within the Global Labor Resilience Index, whether globally, and it's actually the top performing Arab country in the GLRI itself at 35th place overall in the world. When we look at the UAE itself, we see that there are, many strong, aspects to the UAE labor market. So one, macroeconomics, so strong, economy overall, strong in terms of job, creation, and strong in terms of, having quality jobs for its population. However, we know that there are areas for improvement, and UAE policymakers are moving in this type of direction. And we look at them around two different fundamental aspects. So one, some core labor economic policies. So support or developing new policies to support social institutions or social support, such as pension reform or unemployment benefits. And the UAE has taken steps in those particular directions, particularly with unemployment benefits. The second is more transformational policies. So how can the UAE position itself in its labor market, for the future, whether it be in terms of support for more high-tech exports, for example, diversification, continuing on that type of track, and the support for sustainability. Now, when we look at the UAE, labor market, some explicit changes, have been, within those directions, and maybe 3 different fronts. So one, actually, recently, the UAE has revised its labor law and certain, labor practices within the country itself. So, for example, enforcing non-discrimination in terms of work. One, restructuring in terms of the contracts. So, reducing any sort of unlimited contracts from before, and having all mandated time contracts. And then as well, moving into different types of policy directions. So with recent launch of the NAFIS program, which is supporting and providing actually financial and non-financial initiatives, worth billions of US dollars, to actually support, more Emiratis to move in the private sector itself. Third, actually, you have change actually in kind of work practices. So with the government's recent announcement at the federal level, and then taken down at the local levels to 4.5-day work weeks. So this is obviously changing in terms of the structure of work and then the different supports around it. Additionally, another piece is the more provision in terms of remote work, actually visas themselves. So at the federal level, for example, you can come in, you can work within the UAE at a remote, with a remote level, and then work for obviously an employer elsewhere. So lots of changes in terms of ensuring that the policy environment of the UAE is conducive to supporting resilience and obviously for the future of work. When we look actually at where the Middle East is and where it should actually be within supporting labor market resilience over the next 12 months and even beyond, we'd see two main challenges. So first, how to actually ensure that the labor markets themselves are ready for the future of work. And we say future of work, that could be in terms of digital economy, in terms of green economy. So making sure that we're generating those different types of jobs and we're moving in those types of directions. The second piece is actually ensuring that there's the quality and quantity of jobs available, and that the populations and actually the labor market are actually able to fill those jobs. So you look at the quantity and quality of jobs, it's both the future of work and moving in that type of direction, but then also other different types of job generating sectors, such as transportation and logistics, for example. So to make sure that people at all different types of levels and skill sets, have access to quality jobs. When we look at the supply side in terms of, are there going to be people to fill those jobs? We know that the Middle East in particular, needs to support on, skills. So both in terms of hard skills, to make sure that people have, digital skills, the analytical skills, the quantitative skills, but then actually also on soft skills itself, how to interact with people from different cultures, how to, enact in, different remote working environments, and how to actually, make sure that people are, capable to actually have these different types of changing work arrangements themselves. So when we look at actually the future and where, the policy direction needs to go, we see that governments actually need to support policies in both of these types of directions. Moving ahead with terms of the economy and making sure that those transitions are happening, and as well making sure that the labor market is, educated enough and has those different types of skills to meet those demands.